They told you kindness would make you loved, that empathy would make you respected, that humility would make you powerful. But look around. The kindest people are the most overlooked. The most empathetic are the most drained. And the most humble are the most ignored. You were conditioned to believe that being good would protect you, that patience, forgiveness, and endless understanding were virtues. But in the real world, they're traps. Because every time you put others first without question, you quietly teach them that your needs come last. Power isn't lost in betrayal or heartbreak. It's lost in 1,000 quiet moments. Every time you smile when you want to speak, apologize when you did nothing wrong, or say yes when every cell in your body is screaming no. This isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about reclaiming your power from a world that worships weakness disguised as kindness. In this video, you'll learn the 8 things you've been taught are kind, but that actually make you powerless. By the end, you'll stop confusing kindness with submission and start walking with a form of strength the world can feel but never drain again. Because real kindness requires power. And power begins the moment you stop letting guilt define your goodness. Subscribe to join the Guru Clan and start your transformation from too nice to untouchable. 1. Over-apologizing isn't kindness, it's submission. You say sorry like it's a habit, not an emotion. Someone bumps into you and you apologize. You share an opinion, and before you even finish, you soften it with, "Sorry if that sounds harsh." You exist like you're apologizing for taking up space. You think it makes you polite. It doesn't. It makes you small. Over-apologizing isn't humility. It's conditioning. You were trained to believe that peace is maintained by shrinking yourself. That avoiding tension is noble. That being nice means never being firm. But what that really teaches people is that you don't believe in your own worth. Every unnecessary apology chips away at your authority. It signals that your feelings are negotiable, your presence optional, and your voice disposable. And people respond accordingly. They interrupt you more. They question your decisions. They sense your hesitation, and they exploit it. Machiavelli once wrote that men must be either caressed or annihilated. The modern version of that is this: you're either respected or used. There's no middle ground. And when you constantly apologize, you invite the world to use you because you've already declared, through your tone and your words, that you'll never fight back. Here's the truth. Strong people only apologize when they mean it. They don't apologize for existing, for setting boundaries, or for making choices that others dislike. Because they understand that peace without self-respect is submission in disguise. So before you say sorry, ask yourself, did you actually do something wrong, or are you just afraid of discomfort? Most people apologize not to fix harm, but to avoid rejection. It's emotional self-defense, a way to control how others see you by preemptively lowering yourself. But every time you do that, you trade power for approval. The real shift begins when you stop apologizing for things that require confidence, not guilt. Stop saying, "Sorry for bothering you," and say, "Thanks for your time. Sorry I'm late." And say, "Thanks for waiting." Sorry if that upset you, and say, "That wasn't my intention." Replace apology with acknowledgement. Replace guilt with gratitude. Replace submission with ownership. The world won't collapse when you stop apologizing, but the people who only valued your compliance will. Because sorry should be sacred, not a reflex. When you use it wisely, it restores trust. When you use it blindly, it erases your dignity. The next time you feel the word forming on your lips, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to maintain peace or am I surrendering power? Because there's a difference between being kind and being controlled. And the moment you understand that difference, you stop saying sorry for being strong. 2. Always being available destroys your value. You think being available makes you dependable. It doesn't. It makes you forgettable. Every time you answer instantly, show up on command, or drop what you're doing to meet someone else's need, you teach them that your time doesn't belong to you. You think you're being kind, but what you're really doing is signaling that your energy is public property. Availability feels noble at first. You're the reliable one, the one people can always call. But over time, that title turns into a trap. People stop seeing your help as generosity. They start seeing it as obligation. You become background noise, predictable, expected. Machiavelli warned, men value lightly what is easily obtained. It's not just about gold or kingdoms, it's about you. Human nature doesn't cherish what it can always reach. Scarcity creates mystery. Mystery creates value. The more accessible you are, the less weight your presence carries. Think about it. When someone rarely answers, their reply feels significant. When they rarely appear, their appearance feels powerful. That's not arrogance, that's psychology. We're drawn to what's limited, and we dismiss what's constant. But society trained you to do the opposite. It told you that real kindness means being there for everyone, that saying no is rude, that self-respect is selfish. So you stretch yourself thin, thinking it will make people appreciate you, when in reality, it makes them dependent on your weakness. Here's the truth. Being constantly available doesn't make you generous. It makes you replaceable. Because when you're always there, you remove the anticipation, the distance, the tension that makes people value connection in the first place. Even worse, you destroy your ability to command respect. Power is rooted in boundaries and your ability to say, not now. When people see that your world doesn't revolve around them, they're forced to adjust. They stop taking. They start earning. Ask yourself, why do you answer every call? Why do you reply immediately? Why do you rearrange your plans just to accommodate others? It's not because you care too much. It's because you fear being forgotten. You think distance means disconnection, but in truth, distance creates demand. The most magnetic people aren't the ones who are always present. They're the ones who know when to withdraw. They understand that attention is power, and if you give yours away freely, you'll spend your life begging for the respect you've already given up. Here's what it looks like to reclaim your value. Delay your responses. Make your attention deliberate, not automatic. Set hours where you're unreachable. Teach people that your time has structure. Say, I'll get back to you when I can, instead of scrambling to please. Stop explaining your absence. Let silence raise your worth. When you do this, something strange happens. The same people who once ignored your boundaries will begin to adjust to them. The ones who only wanted your availability will drift away, and that's good. They were never loyal to you, only to your access. Being unavailable isn't cold, it's strategic. It forces people to value what they once took for granted. It creates contrast. Presence means nothing without absence. So stop giving your time to everyone and everything that asks for it. Your energy is a currency, not a charity. The moment you understand that, you'll realize powerful people aren't busy because they can't handle life. They're busy because they've built something worth protecting, and they refuse to sell their time for cheap. 3. Saying yes to avoid conflict is self-betrayal. Most people think peace is the absence of conflict. It's not. Real peace is the presence of self-respect. Every time you say yes just to avoid discomfort, to dodge an argument, to keep someone happy, to smooth things over, you betray yourself. You think you're keeping the peace, but all you're really doing is declaring that everyone else's comfort matters more than your own truth. It starts small. You agree to things you don't want to do. You laugh when something offends you. You stay quiet when you should speak up. You tell yourself you're being mature, that it's not worth the fight. But deep down, you know, every fake smile is another crack in your spine. This isn't kindness. It's submission disguised as harmony. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, not because fear is noble, but because respect is born in discomfort." When people know you'll fold to avoid tension, they stop respecting you. They start using you. Think of the last time you said yes when you wanted to say no. Did the world end? Or did the other person simply take more next time? That's the pattern. Manipulators don't need to break you. They just need to know you'll bend yourself. And here's the bitter truth. People sense this weakness instantly. Your tone, your hesitation, your nervous smile, it tells them everything. They know you crave approval more than honesty, so they push, they guilt, they test, and you comply, thinking you're keeping the relationship alive, when in reality, you're keeping your dignity buried. Saying yes to avoid conflict isn't peacekeeping, it's self-abandonment. You become the easy one, the dependable one, the one who never says no. You become the emotional cushion for everyone else's chaos. But that title doesn't come with respect. It comes with exhaustion. Strong men, the kind who command rooms and shape reality, don't avoid conflict. They manage it. They understand that confrontation isn't aggression. It's correction. Every no sets a boundary, and every boundary creates balance. Conflict isn't your enemy. Fear of conflict is, because that fear makes you predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. Look at history. Every tyrant, every manipulator, every abusive boss or toxic friend, they thrive on one type of person, the agreeable one, the one who nods, apologizes, and compromises their integrity for the illusion of peace. But peace built on compliance is just quiet slavery. When you say no, you might lose someone who benefits from your silence, but you'll gain something much greater, yourself. The world doesn't reward blind harmony. It rewards those who are bold enough to stand in tension and still breathe calmly. Try this. Next time you feel that urge to please, pause. Ask yourself, am I agreeing because I believe this, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? That single question will expose every moment you trade respect for approval. The moment you stop fearing conflict, you'll see how weak most people's manipulation truly is. Their power comes from your hesitation, not their strength. Once you show you can stand in silence and let tension breathe, their control evaporates. Because calm defiance is more intimidating than loud resistance. Say no without an explanation. Watch how the air shifts. Watch how people suddenly measure their words, how their tone changes. That's not hostility, that's awareness. They're realizing they can't control you anymore. And that's the point. You don't need to be agreeable to be respected. You don't need to be nice to be kind. The world doesn't need another man who apologizes for existing. It needs men who can say no and mean it. Stop betraying yourself in the name of peace. The only real peace comes from knowing you never abandoned your truth just to keep someone else comfortable. 4. Forgiving without accountability rewards disrespect. You've been told forgiveness is the high road, that letting go means freedom, that to truly move on, you must release the pain, even if they never apologize. But what they never told you is this: forgiveness without accountability is submission in disguise. When you forgive people who never faced their reflection, never owned their betrayal, never felt the weight of what they did, you don't heal. You just bury the wound under the word forgiveness and call it growth. You're not forgiving, you're excusing. And the dangerous part? The world celebrates you for it. They'll say you're so strong for forgiving, but they're not cheering your strength. They're cheering your compliance. They're cheering that you've made it easier for others to disrespect you again. Because here's the truth. People don't change through mercy. They change through consequence. When someone lies to you, manipulates you, disrespects you, and you simply forgive without holding the line, you're telling them there's no cost to crossing you. You're teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable. You're rewarding betrayal with access. That's not grace. That's weakness being rebranded as virtue. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking." In relationships, that doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means making sure disrespect carries a price. Not through anger, but through distance. You don't need to scream. You don't need revenge. Silence, distance, and absence do the work for you. Because when a man who once forgave everything finally walks away and says nothing, the world listens. Most people don't want forgiveness. They want access. They want to commit harm, get caught, and still keep their privileges. And you, desperate to be the bigger person, give it to them, thinking it makes you noble. It doesn't. It makes you easy to use. There's a difference between healing and hiding. Healing means you've processed the lesson, detached from the wound, and moved forward stronger. Hiding means you pretended it didn't matter just to keep the peace. But peace that requires your silence isn't peace. It's submission. Forgiveness isn't a moral obligation. It's a choice. And a choice without boundaries is just emotional charity. The people who truly deserve forgiveness are the ones who've earned it through accountability, not manipulation. You don't owe closure to those who shattered it. You don't owe softness to those who weaponized your empathy. Forgiveness without consequence is like a kingdom without guards. It invites invasion. If someone disrespects you and still gets access to your energy, your time, your kindness, why would they ever change? You removed their incentive to evolve. You turned your compassion into a reward for their disrespect. And in doing so, you taught them something dangerous, that your love will always outrun their cruelty. So stop preaching forgiveness to prove you're over it. Real strength isn't found in how quickly you forgive. It's in how calmly you walk away. Hold people accountable not through anger, but through distance, through unavailability, through silence that echoes louder than arguments ever could. The ones who truly value you will feel that absence and reflect. The rest will move on to find someone else to drain. Either way, you win. You heal the moment you stop mistaking peacekeeping for healing. You grow the moment you understand forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. But it must come after boundaries, not before. Because when you forgive too soon, you erase the lesson. And the universe has a cruel way of repeating the same lesson until you finally learn it. So the next time someone asks for forgiveness but not accountability, remember this. Forgive in your heart, but never reopen the door. Forgive their existence, but not their behavior. Forgive their humanity, but never forget the cost of their choices. Mercy without consequence is how empires fall, and self-respect without discipline is just an illusion. You don't heal by letting people walk over you. You heal by standing so tall they can't reach you again. 5. Empathy without boundaries is emotional suicide. You think being empathetic makes you good, that feeling everyone's pain makes you human, that absorbing people's emotions is a gift, a sign of depth, compassion, or even spiritual strength. But the truth? Empathy without boundaries isn't love. It's emotional suicide. Because when you make everyone suffering your responsibility, you start carrying weights that were never yours to lift. You start bleeding for people who keep cutting you. You start saving people who would drown you if it meant keeping themselves afloat. You think you're helping, but you're just dying slower. There's a difference between compassion and self-destruction. Compassion says, I care. Self-destruction says, I'll destroy myself to prove it. And that's what most good people do. They become emotional dumpsters for the broken, the manipulative, and the lazy. People who mistake your empathy for infinite supply. They learn quickly that if they cry hard enough, you'll bend. If they guilt you long enough, you'll give. Empaths are often the most exhausted people on earth, not because they feel too much, but because they refuse to stop feeling for people who don't deserve it. Machiavelli would have called this what it is, a fatal flaw of the kind-hearted. He understood that mercy must be calculated, not compulsive. You cannot serve both truth and emotional dependence, because the more you absorb, the less of you remains. You stop hearing your own voice beneath the noise of other people's chaos. You start confusing pity for purpose. You start mistaking emotional exhaustion for moral virtue. But here's the raw truth. Not everyone's pain is sacred. Some people suffer as a result of their own choices, and they'll gladly use your empathy to avoid facing that fact. They don't want healing. They want a host. And if you keep giving it to them, you'll wake up one day hollow, numb, and confused, wondering why you feel so drained all the time. It's because you've been carrying the emotional weight of people who never planned to walk beside you, only to lean on you. Empathy without boundaries turns love into servitude. It turns care into currency. It creates a quiet resentment inside you, that whisper of exhaustion that says, why am I always the one who gives, listens, forgives, and fixes? The answer, because you made yourself too available to be drained. The most powerful form of empathy is selective empathy, the kind that observes pain but doesn't absorb it, the kind that can stand in chaos and remain unmoved, not cold, but conscious. True compassion is knowing where you end and others begin. It's saying, I can understand your pain without drowning in it. I can love you without rescuing you. I can care deeply and still walk away when you cross a line. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. Because the world doesn't need more bleeding hearts. It needs strong ones, hearts that know when to close their gates. Think of your empathy like a kingdom. Every act of kindness is a resource, time, energy, attention. And every person who receives it is either an ally or an invader. Without walls, even the most beautiful kingdom falls. You're not heartless for protecting your peace. You're wise, you're strategic. You're learning that not every battle deserves your energy, and not every wound deserves your hands. Machiavelli once wrote that mercy without prudence leads to ruin. Empathy without boundaries does the same. It takes your light and scatters it until there's nothing left to guide you. The world will call you cold when you stop saving everyone, but that's because they were never interested in your warmth, only your usefulness. Empathy is a gift, but a gift without discipline becomes a weapon, and you're the one it kills first. So stop confusing exhaustion for virtue. Stop believing that saving people who refuse to save themselves makes you noble. It doesn't. It makes you easy to use. You are not responsible for healing every wound you touch. Some people are meant to hurt until the pain teaches them what your love never could. Be kind, but be guarded. Care deeply, but choose wisely. Because empathy is powerful only when it's protected. And when you finally learn to protect it, you stop being a victim of your own heart and start becoming the master of it. 6. Helping everyone is a form of ego. You tell yourself you're helping. You say it's because you care, because you don't want to see people suffer. You step into their storms, take on their pain, and convince yourself you're being noble. But the truth is harder to swallow. You're not saving them. You're trying to feel needed. Helping everyone isn't kindness. It's ego disguised as virtue. There's a secret pleasure in being the hero, in being the one everyone calls when their world collapses. It makes you feel powerful, important, irreplaceable, like you have purpose because someone else depends on you. But dependence isn't power. It's a slow death. Every time you fix someone else's problem that they should have faced alone, you rob them of the lessons they were meant to learn. You interrupt their growth and feed your illusion of control. You tell yourself you're helping, but really you're avoiding something, your own chaos. Because as long as you're cleaning up everyone else's mess, you don't have to look at your own. You don't have to confront the parts of you that crave validation, the wounds that whisper, if I'm not useful, I'm nothing. Helping becomes your identity and your addiction. It's why you say yes when you should say no. It's why you drain yourself trying to fix people who don't even want to change. It's why you confuse sacrifice with strength. You wear your exhaustion like a badge of honor, when really it's a sign of misplaced energy. The truth is, not everyone deserves your help. Some people need consequences, not comfort. Some need silence, not saving. Some are addicted to chaos, and every time you rescue them, you feed their addiction. Machiavelli would have called this what it is, weakness disguised as morality. Because a ruler who tries to save everyone ends up saving no one, not even himself. True strength is restraint. It's watching someone fall, knowing you could catch them, but understanding they need the fall to rise. Letting people struggle isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's acknowledging that growth only happens when pain meets accountability, not rescue. But ego hates that truth. Ego wants to feel like a savior. It thrives on the chaos of others because it gives you something to fix, something to control, something that makes you feel significant. And when the people you help eventually drain you, betray you, or leave, the ego feels attacked because its identity was built around being needed. You don't realize it, but every time you play savior, you're building emotional debt, and that debt always comes due. You'll resent them for not appreciating you enough, and they'll resent you for trying to control their lives under the mask of kindness. The cycle is toxic and endless. You're not meant to carry the world on your back. You're meant to carry yourself with enough discipline that others are inspired to stand up too. Leadership isn't rescuing people. It's showing them how to rescue themselves. So stop confusing chaos management for compassion. Stop rushing in to fix every broken soul. You're not a healer. You're a guide, and even guides know when to walk away. Ask yourself this: would you still help if no one ever thanked you? If no one ever called you selfless? If you got no validation, no recognition, just silence? If the answer is no, then it was never about them. It was about you. True humility is allowing others to suffer their own consequences, even when you care. It's understanding that pain is the greatest teacher, and every time you interrupt that lesson, you keep them weak. The strongest thing you can do is not help, to let people struggle, to let them fail, to let them rebuild alone, because in doing so, you give them back their power, and you reclaim yours. Helping everyone is an illusion of strength. Real strength is walking away when your presence enables weakness. So next time you feel the urge to fix, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this for them or for the feeling it gives me? That question alone will expose your motives. The world doesn't need more saviors. It needs more people strong enough to let others face their storms. Because when you stop needing to be needed, you become dangerous, unshakable, free. You stop chasing significance and saving others, and start finding it and mastering yourself. 7. Avoiding confrontation isn't maturity, it's fear. You call it maturity. You tell yourself you're being the bigger person. You let things slide, swallow your words, and convince yourself that silence is strength. But it's not strength, it's fear. You're not avoiding confrontation because you're wise, you're avoiding it because you're scared of discomfort, scared of being disliked, scared of being seen as difficult. You've mistaken avoidance for peace when in truth it's self-betrayal in disguise. Every time you stay silent when someone disrespects you, a piece of you dies. A quiet part of your soul whispers, "Why didn't you defend me?" But you ignore it, you bury it. You tell yourself, it's not worth the drama, but what you don't see is that this very silence becomes your prison. Avoiding confrontation doesn't make you calm, it makes you complicit. It allows disrespect to grow roots. It teaches others that they can cross lines without consequence. And over time, it conditions you to tolerate what you once would have never allowed. Machiavelli once said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, because fear commands respect and respect creates peace. Love without boundaries creates chaos." What you call maturity has become cowardice dressed in politeness. You've mistaken suppression for control. But real control comes from confrontation, from standing your ground when it's uncomfortable. Conflict is not chaos. Conflict is truth colliding with falsehood. It's the fire that burns away deception, reveals intentions, and purifies relationships. And without it, everything becomes fake. Your friendships become performances. Your relationships become one-sided. Your workplace becomes a stage where you smile through silent resentment. You keep the peace externally while waging war internally. That's not peace, that's surrender. The strongest people you know aren't the ones who avoid confrontation. They're the ones who can walk into it calmly, clearly, and without hatred. They don't raise their voices, they raise their standards. They understand that a life without confrontation is a life without authenticity. Every time you avoid saying what you feel, you reinforce the idea that your comfort matters less than other people's approval. And once people sense that they own you, you become the one who bends first, the one who apologizes first, the one who compromises everything to keep others happy. That's not kindness. That's fear of loss disguised as compassion. True kindness is direct. It's honest. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it cuts, but it cuts clean. Because truth is the ultimate form of respect, both to yourself and others. A man who avoids confrontation is a man who fears being seen. Because confrontation exposes, it forces you to show your values, your standards, your limits. It strips away your mask. And maybe that's why so many people avoid it. Because confrontation demands self-respect, and self-respect demands courage. You don't need to shout to be confrontational. You don't need anger. You just need conviction. A calm voice that says, that's not acceptable. A steady gaze that says, you don't get to talk to me like that. The moment you start doing that, people's energy toward you changes. The world starts treating you like someone who has weight, someone whose presence demands awareness. You become the person who doesn't need to prove power, because your boundaries speak louder than your emotions. Avoiding confrontation doesn't make you evolved, it makes you easy to manipulate. Because manipulators love people who fear conflict. They know you'll bend. They know you'll choose silence. They know they can guilt you with your own desire to be nice. But real niceness has limits. So stop calling fear maturity. Stop calling avoidance peace. Stop calling your silence virtue. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of boundaries. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to make someone uncomfortable with the truth. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. The next time you feel that familiar tension, that urge to stay silent just to keep things smooth, ask yourself, am I being mature or am I just afraid? Because one path protects your ego, the other protects your soul, and only one leads to real strength. 8. Seeking approval is the death of power. You think you're being kind, thoughtful, empathetic, but deep down, every nice act you perform is secretly begging for validation. You want to be seen as good, as likable, as the one who means well, and in that craving for approval, you lose everything that made you powerful. Because the moment your peace depends on someone else's perception, you're no longer free, you're owned. Approval is a leash. It doesn't look like one because it feels good. It feels warm when someone praises you, when they tell you, you're such a good person, but that warmth is the same one a prisoner feels under a spotlight. Comforting until you realize it's surveillance. When your actions depend on how they'll be received, you've traded authenticity for applause. You've become a performer, not a person. You think you're choosing kindness, but really you're choosing safety. Because being kind, in the eyes of others, protects you from judgment. It keeps you from being labeled rude, arrogant, or selfish. But that's the trap. You can't be powerful and need to be liked at the same time. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He who seeks to be loved will never command respect. Love that's built on approval is fragile. One disagreement, one boundary, and it disappears. Respect, however, is born in discomfort. Approval seeking makes you predictable. People learn that a single sigh, frown, or look of disapproval can control you. And once they know that they don't need force, they can steer you with guilt. You'll bend yourself into smaller and smaller shapes just to keep their smile. That's not kindness. That's servitude. You tell yourself, I just want peace. But the truth is, you want permission to exist without conflict. You're not trying to be a good person. You're trying not to be rejected. And that's why the approval chaser always ends up empty. Because no amount of validation can fill the void of self-disrespect. You can't trade authenticity for acceptance and expect to feel whole. Real kindness isn't about being liked, it's about being aligned. It means doing what's right even when it's unpopular. It means saying no even when it disappoints people. It means standing by your truth even when it isolates you. That's what separates moral courage from moral vanity. Moral vanity is doing good so people see it. Moral courage is doing good when nobody claps, or worse, when everyone hates you for it. Every powerful figure in history was misunderstood. Every visionary was mocked before they were celebrated. Because truth doesn't earn approval, it earns resistance. But resistance is a sign you're on the right path. It means you've stopped living for the crowd. When you stop seeking approval, your energy shifts. You stop chasing people who misunderstand you. You stop over-explaining your decisions. You stop feeling guilty for outgrowing old versions of yourself that kept others comfortable. That's when you become magnetic, because real power is rooted in self-validation, the quiet conviction that says, I know who I am, even if you don't. When you no longer need the world's permission, you move differently. You speak differently. You command space without trying. People may not always like you, but they'll always feel your presence. Approval is fleeting. Power is eternal. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did something purely because it felt right, not because it would be praised? When was the last time you risked being disliked for staying true to your standard? That's the test of real strength. The approval seeker survives through others. The powerful man creates his own validation through alignment with his purpose. You don't need to be seen as good. You need to be grounded. Because goodness without strength is manipulation waiting to happen. And strength without approval is liberation. So stop chasing smiles. Stop curating your image. Stop dimming yourself to stay likable. Be decisive. Be cold if needed. Be misunderstood if that's the price of truth. The crowd doesn't define you, it distracts you. And once you stop needing their approval, you'll feel it. That strange silence inside you that used to crave attention finally becomes peace. that silence isn't emptiness. It's power. And that's when you become untouchable. You've been trained your whole life to equate kindness with compliance, to equate being liked with being valuable. But the truth is, every time you bend to fit someone's comfort, you shrink your own power. The world doesn't reward the agreeable. It rewards the grounded, the ones who can walk away without explanation, who can stay silent when others demand reaction, who can choose self-respect over approval every single time. Because when you stop chasing validation, people start giving it to you. Not because you asked for it, but because they feel your strength. So stop performing for applause. Start building presence through conviction. The man who no longer needs to be understood becomes unforgettable. If this hit you, it's because you've been too kind for too long, too forgiving, too accommodating. Now it's time to evolve. Leave a comment below. Tell me where in your life you've been giving too much away. And if you're done being controlled by emotion, validation, or guilt, subscribe. Join the ones who move with calm, power, and purpose. The ones who stopped chasing approval and started building empires. Welcome to the Guru Clan.